Welcome to the Complete Leader Podcast, giving leaders the tools and information they need to grow and change their worlds. Now here's your host, Dale Dixon.
Creative strategic thinking. Welcome to the Complete Leader Podcast, everything you need to become a high-performing leader. I'm your host, Dale Dixon, alongside Ron Price for our weekly conversations, joined today by Professor Tim. So good to see you both.
Thank you, Dale. Good to be with you.
So these conversations, this series, we're diving into the new book by Ron, Professor Tim Waema, and Evans Baya called Optimizing Strategy for Results. And you can find out more about the book at optimizingstrategyforresults.com. Ron was holding it up. You know, Ron, I'm thinking about from a video perspective because this platform only shows who's talking. I was talking, so people didn't see it while we raised the book. But while you raise the book, why don't you talk to us about the three of you collaborating on this?
Yeah, this is, we've had some wonderful conversations about strategy through the years, Dale. And in January of 2020, we sat down and said, you know what, we ought to go ahead and see if we should explore whether we can find the energy to collaborate effectively around this. We worked on an outline and threw it back and forth via email. And then in April of 2020, because we were homebound, we decided this is the time to start doing it. So every Friday morning, we would have a Zoom call where we would have writing assignments. We would talk about them. We would come back and read what we had written and have further conversation. And it was over 40 Zoom meetings that it took us to get this book written. And then it went through several edits after that as we shared it with other people and got their advice. And I can't tell you how happy I think all three of us are with the results. We created something together that none of us could have created alone. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about writing in a collaborative way.
So the book details these 7 stages of strategy, looking at strategy really as a holistic, ongoing, I'll call it a virtuous cycle that takes place inside of an organization. It starts with establishing the foundation for strategy, building strategic intelligence, and then today we're talking through this idea of creative strategic thinking. So what are some of the outcomes that we're looking for as we work through this stage of creative thinking?
We've actually crossed a bridge as we move from stage 2 to stage 3. We consider stage 1 and 2 as being preparing for strategy. Mm-hmm. So in stage 1, we're looking at our foundations, which are made up of our purpose and our vision and our values. In stage 2, we're developing strategic intelligence, which we talked about in depth in the previous episode. But now we're moving from preparing for strategy to creating strategy as we move into stage 3. Creative strategic thinking, or another way of thinking about it, is creating strategic options. And this was a really fun thing for us to talk about. I think everybody's a little bit different. I tend to be the person who loves the creative side more than the analytical side. So this is where I get a lot of energy from.
Yes, and moving from stage 2 to stage 3, stage 2, really the outcome of stage 2 is the intelligence, and that becomes the basis for the strategy. And in this third stage, this is where now we look at the outcome of stage 2, the intelligence that we have gathered, and come up with strategic options. What options exist for us for the future? And those are the options we shall choose for our strategy. So that the main outcome of this is creating as many options, strategic options as possible, from which we have a rich selection of the possible directions.
You know, Dale, I think that one of the most important things that leaders do is to make good decisions, because they trigger everything else that happens inside an organization. And the reason that we believe so much in 7 different stages is because to make good decisions, you sort of oscillate or ebb and flow between divergent thinking, which is spreading out and creating more options, and then convergent thinking, where you narrow down and make decisions. Well, this stage one, if you think about it, looking at our foundations is very divergent. You're really opening up. Stage two is convergent. You're narrowing down to these are our strengths, limitations, opportunities, and challenges. Now we're saying with these strengths, limitations, opportunities, and challenges that we identified, how can we be divergent again and open up lots and lots of chances, lots of opportunities. So we have a very simple exercise, but it is really dynamic in creative strategic thinking.
Okay. Just really quick, I'm thinking of a quote, "The history will be kind to me because I intend to write it." So this is the start of the writing process for what our future can look like, is what I'm hearing you say. So explain the simple but highly effective tool.
Go ahead, Prof. You're the one that wrote it up for the book, so go for it.
Yes, this is really, at the end of stage two, we come up with the slog elements. The strengths, limitations, opportunities, and challenges. And as Ron explained earlier, we look at the most critical ones that we need to deal with. And we came up with this way of combining the internal elements, which are strengths and limitations, with the external elements, which are the opportunities and challenges. And doing a combination to find out, for example, between strengths and opportunities, looking at the elements in those two cells, what are the possible options we can use to take advantage of the strengths that we have, and at the same time seize the opportunities that exist out there in the external environment, and generating as many options as possible.
And in the book, we actually show how to do this in a very systematic way. What I think is so cool about this is that it's combining a systemic approach with great creativity. Yes. So to give you an example, we let's say that we had 5 vital strengths that we identified, and we have 5 opportunities and 5 challenges. It could be any number, but we would take strength number 1, and then we would combine it with opportunity number 1. And we would say, when we combine these two together, what are 3 different options of what we could do to leverage that strength against this opportunity? Then we do the same thing with strength 1 and opportunity 2, opportunity 3, opportunity. So if you do that with strength 1 and 5 opportunities, you've all of a sudden got 15 options that you've created. Then you've got 5 challenges. So you compare strength 1 to your challenges, and now you end up with another 15 if you go challenge 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you do the same thing with strength 2 with all of your opportunities and challenges, then strength 3, strength 4, strength 5. You do the same thing with limitation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't take long at all, and you've got literally hundreds of options that you're working with. Now, we're in the creative stage, so we're not making decisions yet. We're seeing how many different ways we can think about combining our strengths and our limitations with the external opportunities and challenges. And the energy that's created by this is just phenomenal. I've seen groups in 45 minutes or an hour come up with 200 or 300 or 400 options using this systematic approach with creative thinking at the same time. And it does create a lot of energy.
One of the challenges that we normally see is people want to start evaluating those options immediately. And we tell them, please do not be tempted to evaluate those options. We will evaluate them later. One of the interesting things is we have separated this stage from the one of selection, the evaluation stage, which is the next stage. And because we wanted to emphasize that creating the options is critical, because that is where if you don't create as many options as possible, you might end up with a strategy that does not include something that you did not consider, because you never looked at the whole scope of options.
I was going to ask, so this really is a creative exercise. It needs to happen in a no judgment zone. We're not going to say, I like that idea. No, that would never work, or we've done that before and it didn't work. It's blank slate, piece of paper. Let's get everything down we can think of.
Yeah, and Dale, as a support to this, Dr. Baya is an innovation expert, and he's really done a lot to help us understand the whole concept of managing your ideas. So when you combine his work in another book that we co-authored called The Innovator's Advantage with this stage, you get even more and more depth. But this whole idea of strategy in 7 stages is that you can keep moving back and forth between the stages as you learn new things. You never do it perfectly, so every year you're trying to add more value to the process. It is an ongoing journey. And this part of the journey is oftentimes, it's toward the middle because we're in stage 3 out of 7. This part of the journey is often the thing that really helps people begin to see the value of what was accomplished in stage 1 and stage 2, that it's given us tremendous construct, or a tremendous framework through which we can be creative. It's a funny thing, but we can be creative in a more systematic and dynamic
manner.
And in a way that multiplies the possibilities for us to consider. Before I understood using this process, we would do creative thinking, but we might come up with 20 or 30 or 50 ideas. This is just unloads all kinds of creativity by using this process.
And actually, it is not surprising to find you creating in very few minutes 300 to 500 options. And this is the stage where there is a lot of energy, because you get everybody involved. You are not judging any option, and everybody get involved. Yes, I want to contribute. And you find, if you say, okay, between this opportunity and this strength, please give me whatever options you think of. People say, can I give more than one? I say, yes, give as many as you want. And this is where everybody gets excited.
So Dale, there are a couple things that I'm thinking of that I've experienced in this stage that would be valuable for us to talk about before we're finished. The first is, as in every stage, we talk about organizing people to leverage their strengths and neutralize their weaknesses. So we actually think about the people who are going to work on strengths and opportunities are the people who are the big picture thinkers. They're the people who are the visionaries, the people who think, why not? We could do whatever we decide to do. The people that we combine with the strengths and the limitations are the people who are, the strengths and the challenges are the people who are thinking about, yes, we can make progress, but we want it to be well thought out. We want it to be steady. We want to be intentional. The people who work on limitations and opportunities are the people who are very precise, the people who want to be very, very analytical, and they want to really find where all the problems are. And the people who are working through the limitations and the challenges are the people who love to solve big problems. So we organize people into these 4 different groups based on their natural tendencies, and it gets us much, much greater results as a consequence. So that's the first thing I wanted to comment on. The second thing is as we get through this, now what do you do when you've got 300, 500, maybe even 1,000 ideas? Well, it's not that difficult for us to begin to organize these into themes based on the 3 internal factors that we looked at and the 3 external factors. So which themes are related to our organizational awareness, our organizational discipline, or our organizational energy? Which themes are related to our customers, our competitors, or the larger trends in society around us? And as we begin to organize these into themes, they're beginning to set the stage so that we'll be prepared to do a good job when we get to the next stage where we're going to be making strategic decisions.
Okay. So when we're done with this stage, and I know we're never done because of this virtuous cycle, but in the process, as we come to a place where we think we're ready to move to the next stage, beyond some comprehensive lists, what are some of the things that we're looking for to say, oh, we did this right?
I would say one of the first things I'm looking for is the level of excitement that's generated by this stage and the level of confidence that so many people think of developing strategy as being this difficult fortune telling or forecasting about the future and how can we know? And as we move through this stage, because of both the work we did before this stage and what we accomplish in this stage, people are beginning to recognize that you can actually have a solid sense of where you want to go and why it's the right direction for you to take. And it's this oscillation between divergent and convergent thinking back and forth that helps people begin to develop this deeper level of confidence. And maybe for many people who are doing strategy this way for the first time, they all of a sudden have a lot more courage about what they're doing with strategy because it doesn't seem so ambiguous to them.
For me, the most important thing is, of course, we have created very many options. But this is where we get people excited. And this is actually where we start getting the commitment to the strategy because everybody feels I have contributed towards the future strategy because I have come up with something that we could do in the future. And this is the time they say, I can't wait to get involved in the next stage because now this is where we start making choices.
Okay. Our next conversation as we tee this up is going to be around strategic decision making. Ron gave us a brief hint that was coming up, but that will be the focus of the next conversation. Ron Price, Professor Tim Waema, and Evans Baya, the authors of Optimizing Strategy for Results. You can find more about the book at optimizingstrategyforresults.com. You can also find that book wherever you buy books, and we encourage you to pick it up. It's a great companion to these conversations as you read through the book and listen to the conversations. It will help bring it to life even more for you. So that's the reason we're having these. We'll continue this in our next conversation with the next stage in the process. While you are right there hovering over your podcast player, whether it be YouTube or your other favorite podcast player app, please rate, review this podcast, subscribe if you have not done so already. We really appreciate it. Check out the website, optimizingstrategyforresults.com. And until next time, have a fantastic week.
Thanks for listening to the Complete Leader Podcast. Find more online, thecompleteleader.org.